In the ancient and historically hip city of Boston, Massachusetts, circa 1783, Richter Belmont, the vampire hunter extraordinaire, is being stealthily whisked away by none other than his dear mom, Julia Belmont, under the veil of night. But alas, luck seems to be playing hide and seek with them because, lo and behold, they get a surprise visit from Orlox, the vampire on a vengeance spree, played by Zach McLarnon. You know, the kind of vengeance that practically bursts out of the TV screen. And what follows is a showdown that's so kinetic, colorful, and bloody that even Picasso would be like, I can't paint that. Orlox, in a move that could put Godzilla to shame, transforms into a gigantic dragon and does what dragons do best: make a mess. Julia doesn't get away unscathed in this vampire versus vampire hunter brawl, and Richter has to witness the heartbreaking spectacle of his dear mother meeting her end right before his eyes. Cue the dramatic Annem tears. Fast forward 9 years and we find Richter all grown up, hanging out with his BFF Maria Renard as they attend a secret meeting, some revolutionary folks in the midst of the French Revolution. Maria's got that passionate leader vibe going on, and the meeting is off to a riveting start. But surprise, surprise, there's no time for boring meetings because suddenly, vampires decide to crash the party. You think Richter and Maria would want to just Netflix and chill, but nope, they've got a vampire mess to deal with. These vamps are all huddled up at a fancy chateau, waiting for someone they've labeled as the vampire messiah, devourer of light. Talk about high expectations. In a twist of fate, Richter and Maria reluctantly team up with the clergy, led by Abbot Emmanuel of Macacal. There's some serious tension between these holy folks and the revolutionaries. Abbot doesn't hold back and straight up calls them a godless mob. But hey, when the forces of evil are at your doorstep, you gotta put differences aside and make awkward alliances, right? The show doesn't even try to hide the fact that the chateau is vampire central. It starts with a bang, showcasing a wild vampire party where guests are showing off their pearly whites, and we're not talking about their smiles. Things take a darker turn at night when a tipsy guard named Jacques hits an unwelcome surprise from one of the upper-class chateau guests. The connection between vampires and privilege couldn't be clearer if it slapped you in the face. But wait, there's more. As night falls, Richter, Maria, and Maria's witchy mother, Tara, find themselves in a night creature pickle. These aren't your average Halloween zombies. These are reanimated corpses with a demonic twist, courtesy of some dark magic. And guess who's behind it? The Forge Masters, because apparently being a wizard isn't cool enough, you've got to be a Forge Master. Just when our heroes are in danger of being night creature appetizers, they get saved by the new kids in town, Anette and Edouard. These fresh faces are part of the vampire hunting dream team, and they've sailed all the way from the Caribbean island of Saint Domingue. Their mission? To spill the beans about the vampire messiah and specifically to find Richter Belmont. Talk about a jet-setting vampire hunting squad. But wait, there's a plot twist worthy of an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Orlox, the vampire with a grudge, who's responsible for Julia's demise, decides to join the party. It turns out he's got some business with the vampire messiah too. What are the odds, right? Just when you thought you'd left all your family drama behind, it comes back to bite you, literally. Abbot Emmanuel of Macacal dramatically unveils the arrival of a new Joan of Arc, someone destined to lead the righteous down a righteous path and keep them from doing the limbo under the godless movement's stick. You think this is the introduction of a divine figure, right? Well, hold on to your holy water, because this messiah isn't exactly a certified saint. In fact, her entrance, lurking in the shadows, is about as holy as a vampire's sunscreen. You see, this messiah isn't the offspring of the big guy upstairs. Nope, Anette, our magical maven, is the daughter of an Orisha descendant, which is basically like having direct access to the god's spellbook. Her sorcery game is on point. And then we've got Edouard, the opera singer turned hero, who helped Anette make her great escape. Opera by day, vampire hunter by night. Talk about a career shift. So here's the scoop. Annette's been trained by a powerful sorcerer named Cecile, who gave her one mission: find Richter Belmont, the head honcho of the Belmont clan, famous for their vampire-slaying prowess. You see, vampires and the aristocracy have this cozy relationship to maintain their global influence. But our new vampire messiah, Countess Ursabet Bathory, has some grand plans. She wants to overthrow this cozy arrangement and put vampires in the driver's seat, using humans as their fancy puppets while they pull all the strings. But here's where it gets chilling. Bathory isn't your garden variety vampire. She's a sadistic, immortal bloodsucker who's been torturing and delighting in the agony of her victims way before she became immortal. Her idea of a fun evening involved keeping her victims alive for as long as possible. And when she became a vampire herself, she didn't exactly enroll in charm school. Tara, Maria's witchy mom, spills the beans about her connection to Countess Bathory. Turns out they belong to a clan known as the Speakers, a group of highly educated nomadic scholars who are basically the keepers of oral traditions. Sifat from Castlevania fame used to be one of them too. Tara reveals that her sister got nabbed by Bathory and she had to do the unthinkable, take her sister down, before she could escape from Russia. Now, our dream team of Richter, Anette, Edouard, and Maria decide to crash the chateau party under the cover of darkness. Annette's magic detective skills come in handy when she discovers that the Comte de Valblac, the vampire responsible for their enslavement and her mother's death, is alive and kicking. This guy was also one of the few colonialists who managed to pull off a great escape from Saint-Domingue. Anette, fueled by righteous fury, taps into her magical mojo, which sends out a vampire's beware signal to the group. A ferocious battle unfolds, but let's face it, our heroes are somewhat outnumbered, and they realize it's time to make like a tree and leave. While Anette uses her magical skills to conjure up a bridge to safety, Edward becomes the unfortunate target of a vampire gang ambush. He gets captured, much to Annette's dismay, and things are looking a bit grim. The episode leaves us hanging with the image of Edward's body getting tossed into a wheelbarrow filled with lifeless bodies, all ready to be shipped to the Forge Master for a little DIY night creature creation. The origin story of Anette is as gripping as a soap opera plot twist. Back in her childhood days in Saint-Domingue, poor Anette had a front row seat to the tragedy that was her mother's demise at the hands of Valblak. And what makes this tale even juicier is that Anette was descended from Ogun, the god of iron, which gave her powers that were about as controllable as a bull in a china shop. But fear not, because fate had something better in store for Anette. One day, while fleeing from her pursuers, she found refuge in the dressing room of none other than Edouard, the opera sensation with a heart of gold, and maybe some iron too. Edouard doesn't just give her a warm welcome. He offers her clothes and a safe haven. What guy? Anette quickly discovers that Edouard is no ordinary entertainer. Nope, he's a freeborn who uses his performances to dazzle the colonizers and then sneakily aids runaway slaves in their quest for freedom. Talk about multitasking. Under Edouard's wing, Anette is introduced to the Maroons, a group of rebel slaves fighting for their liberation. Here, she meets Cecile, a magic guru who helps Anette tap into her godly powers and harness her magical potential. It's a magical mentorship made in heaven, or at least the Opera House. As if that weren't enough, Anette and Edouard join forces with the Maroons to wage war against the oppressive colonizers and their vampire buddies. During these epic skirmishes, Valblak, being the crafty vampire that he is, manages to pull a disappearing act by transforming into a bat. Slippery little bloodsucker. Now you'd think that liberating Saint-Domingue from the clutches of human and vampire oppressors would be a happily ever after situation, but nope. Cecile has a vision straight out of a supernatural horror movie. She foresees the arrival of a vampire messiah in Europe, and it's not good news for anyone. Troubled by this vision, Cecile gives Anette and Edouard a mission that's juicier than a soap opera cliffhanger. Head to France, find Richter Belmont, and team up to take down Countess Bathory, the vampire bigwig. Cue the dramatic music. In the present day, we've got Orlox keeping an eagle eye on the clergy and having a friendly chat with Mirzak, the abbot's right-hand man. Orlox's a burning question. Why on earth is the abbot creating night creatures for the Messiah? And he's not shy about pointing out that Countess Bathory is a special kind of vampire sadist. It's like vampire HR drama unfolding before our eyes. But here's the kicker. Orlox isn't entirely on board the Messiah train. Even among vampires, there's a pecking order, and Orlox's feathers are definitely ruffled. The plot thickens. Back to the revolutionaries who are introduced to Anette as part of the uprising against the colonialists. Anette, in the midst of a rousing speech, it's a surprise visit from night creatures, and lo and behold, one of them is a transformed Edouard. Anette recognizes him by those unforgettable eyes. It turns out Edouard had a bit of a makeover, courtesy of a machine whipped up by the abbot. The abbot made a deal with a demon to forge these night creatures, and he's now squarely in the Messiah's fan club. Talk about a plot twist. It's time for some drama with a capital D. The abbot, in all of his holier-than-thou glory, decides to give the night creatures a stern talking to because they dared to disobey orders and save Anette. But here's the kicker. One of those night creatures turns out to be none other than Edouard. Yep, it's a revelation that hits you like a plot twist in the final act of a thriller. Suddenly, those night creatures don't seem like mindless monsters anymore. They've evolved, or maybe they've reached sentience, and that throws a curveball into the whole black and white worldview we started with. Looks like this show has more shades of gray than your grandma's old photo album. Nuance, my friends. And speaking of forbidden fruit, we've got Orlox and Mirzak sharing a bed. Now, this isn't just your typical vampire-human forbidden romance. It's got a whole lot of layers. Orlox is not only a vampire, but also happens to have different sexual preferences, which makes their relationship extra complicated. But let's not equate vampirism and sexual preferences. That's a bad take indeed. Enter Droltif Suntis, the right-hand person of the vampire messiah, oozing dark, sexy, and alluring vibes. She's a pro at cozying up to the upper class and managing vampires, even in broad daylight. Drolta is here to do her job, which includes checking in on those night creatures. Gotta make sure they're clocking in on time, right? Meanwhile, our gang is divided on their plan of attack. Anette is all about that revenge life, while Richter, who's usually the adventurous type, surprisingly opts for a safer route. It's clear he's less invested in the revolution and has fewer emotional ties to Edouard and the night creatures. Plot twist, anyone? But wait, there's more. Tara, our witchy wonder, finally spills the beans about a secret route inside the church. It involves a hidden lever on the outside wall because, secret routes gotta have secret entrances. Tara's personal guidance is a bonus, but of course, they run into a night creature roadblock just to keep things interesting. And as if that's not enough, Drolta and the clergy decide to crash the party too. Amidst the chaos and battles on all sides, Anette is trying to free Edouard and is hit with a wave of grief when she realizes he's sentient. It's like trying to save your old best friend only to find out they're now a superhero with new powers. Bittersweet, to say the least. But here's the kicker. Richter suddenly hears a voice that sends shivers down his spine. It's a silky voice that takes him back to that fateful night when he witnessed his mother's death. Orlox is in the house, and just like that, Richter reverts to being that scared kid again. His PTSD kicks in, and he starts running toward the exit like his life depends on it, dragging Anette along for the not-so-grand escape. Sometimes, old wounds can open up in the most unexpected ways, and as if things weren't complicated enough, Drolta refers to Orlox as the Aztec and drops the bomb that she's expecting him. Yep, this plot keeps getting thicker than a vampire's coffin lid. We find Richter Belmont having made a daring escape from the dungeon, sitting by the tranquil banks of a lake, tears streaming down his face. Meanwhile, Maria, brave but critically injured from the battle, is in dire need of medical attention. Anette, our magic-wielding savior, steps in to try and patch her up. After exhausting all conventional methods, Anette uses a piece of cloth stained with her own blood and taps into her psychic prowess. She psychically imprints an impression of her hand in the cloth to sew Maria's wounds. It's not just a display of her magical abilities, but also a testament to her determination to save her friends. However, it's clear that Anette is disappointed with Richter's escape from the dungeon. She argues that if she had run away from her own past, she wouldn't be here today, having survived slavery and embraced her powers. Tara and Maria attempt to reason with her, urging caution and understanding Richter's perspective. Anette reluctantly agrees not to intervene at the church, except for reconnaissance. But as soon as she steps out, her curiosity gets the best of her, and she finds herself following Drolta and Orlox. Fresh from attending the Marquis's funeral, who met his end in the skirmish, Drolta is somehow finding humor in the Marquis's wife carrying around her late husband's head. Anette decides to interrupt Orlox, who's in the middle of a blood-sucking session with an aristocrat. She explains to Orlox that unlike the rest of the world, vampires are still in a tentative alliance with humans until the Messiah enters the picture. It turns out Sekhmet, an ancient Egyptian god, has been reincarnated as Bathory, and she's on a mission to block out the light from the sky and shroud Earth in permanent darkness. Anette overhears this conversation, which takes a surprising turn. Almost coincidentally, she gets into a confrontation with Vablink, and it's clear she's out for revenge. She fashions the iron bars from a nearby graveyard into crosses and lines them up to create a cage around Vablink. With Vablink imprisoned, Anette learns that the Messiah, Countess Bathory, actually drank Sekhmet's blood, giving her immense power and the loyalty of all vampire clans, willing or not. As the sun begins to rise, banishing the darkness, Anette delivers a poignant line about the natural order of things, and Vablink bursts into flames. Meanwhile, a couple of intriguing events unfold. Tara and Maria are visited by Abbot Emmanuel, who attempts to make amends with Tara due to his disappointment in his own actions, as he's become entangled with the vampires. In the midst of their confrontation, he accidentally reveals a shocking truth. He's Maria's father. In a different part of town, Richter is just trying to grab a meal when he encounters an elderly man who unexpectedly pays for his tab. Things take a turn when the old man is confronted by a stranger, and without missing a beat, he takes Belmont's iconic whip and makes quick work of the ensuing bar brawl. He then hands the whip back to Richter, berating him for not taking better care of it. Richter is understandably surprised by the old man's identity, but the old man reveals himself to be none other than Juice, Richter's grandfather. It's a family reunion that comes with its own set of surprises. As the plot thickens, the characters' paths intertwine, secrets are uncovered, and alliances are put to the test. With each twist and turn, the story inches closer to its climactic showdown. The layers of family and history continue to unravel as we learn that Juice Belmont has been silently watching over Richter Belmont throughout his entire life. Tara, who is revealed to be Richter's cousin many times removed, also knew about Juice's decision to not be directly involved in Richter's upbringing. During a dinner conversation with Richter, Juice opens up about his own magical abilities, which were once among the strongest of his generation, much like their ancestor Sypha. However, tragedy struck when his wife and friend Maxim were brutally killed by the ruthless vampire Lord Ruthven, causing him to lose his magical powers. Meanwhile, Orlox, who's slowly but surely becoming a more complex character, reveals a deeper layer to his enmity with Richter. It's not just a vampire versus vampire hunter feud. Orlox discloses to Mirzak that his grudge stems from the fact that Julia Belmont inadvertently killed Orlox's beloved, a Mulligan whom he had transformed into a vampire so they could be together for eternity. Mirzak questions whether he'll share the same fate, to which Orlox wryly reassures him that their relationship is quite different. It seems that Orlox is not entirely loyal to Erzbet Bathory, despite her brainwashed followers celebrating her arrival in Paris. Speaking of Bathory's arrival, a disturbing mass celebration occurs with the crowd clamoring for the revival of Joan of Arc. Strangely, the crowd remains oblivious to the imprisoned woman being used as a blood source for Bathory. It's a chilling display of manipulation and the power of a charismatic leader. During the celebration, Drolta witnesses an unusual sight, the abbot meeting with Maria and attempting to reconcile their relationship. Maria, while not entirely receptive, doesn't outright reject him either. It's a moment of reconciliation amid chaos. Back at Juice's humble abode, a sense of family and connection begins to blossom between Juice and Richter. However, their bonding time is rudely interrupted when Bathory's vampire horde launches an attack. In a dire situation where Richter sees his grandfather overpowered, he makes a pivotal decision to fight on, even at the risk of losing everything he holds dear. Suddenly, his latent magical powers are activated, and he unleashes a devastating display of magical prowess, obliterating the vampires with relative ease. When the bewildered vampires ask how he managed such a feat, Richter delivers a poignant response. He explains that he had people left in his life to love, a stark contrast to his grandfather, who had shut himself off from such connections. It's a powerful moment of self-discovery and a testament to the strength of human bonds in the face of adversity. As Richter returns to Tara and Maria, he reconciles with them and lends his formidable strength to help fend off the vampire horde that's been attacking the mother-daughter duo. He makes quick work of the vampires, and his reunion with Tara and Maria solidifies their bond. Reconciliation is a powerful theme in this tale, and it's heartening to see these characters coming together. Annette's reconciliation with Richter, on the other hand, takes a different path. She's had a conversation with her mentor and ancestors in the spirit plane, where she's gained insight into the slow process of reconciling grief and trauma. While some might argue that her reconciliation with Richter should have taken longer, Annette's journey of healing and understanding has led her to a place where she's ready to reconnect with him. Despite Europe's advancement in embracing values like liberty, equality, and fraternity, the story doesn't shy away from highlighting the painful blindness to the suffering of colonized populations, including Anette and her community. They are shunned by the very Europeans who champion morality within their own country. It's a stark reminder of the stark contrast between ideals and reality. Cecile plays a crucial role in Annette's development, challenging her to embrace her true potential as a defender of her community's way of life, rooted in ancient beliefs and culture. As Annette realizes this, viewers begin to sense that something more profound is brewing between Richter and Annette. With the quartet now reunited, they plan to storm the church, but are puzzled about how the abbot is forging these night creatures. Suddenly, Orlox appears in a dramatic fashion, emerging from a cloud of smoke, and hands them a book that details the machine used by the abbot to create these creatures. The book is written in Enochian, the language of hell. What's even more intriguing is Orlox's revelation that, ironically, defeating the Countess's plans would require Belmont's help. However, Maria makes a fateful decision that could change the course of events. She decides to return to her father and inform him about their plan to destroy the machine. Little does she know that the abbot has fully fallen under the Countess's influence. The Countess, aware of Maria's parentage, reveals that the abbot must sacrifice someone he loves to secure his place in the new world. In a heart-wrenching moment, the abbot captures his own daughter. This proves to be the turning point for Mirzak, who decides to desert the abbot and join forces with the vampire hunters. Back with the hunters, Tara figures out that the machine cannot be destroyed but can only be banished to hell. However, as they race towards the church, darkness begins to fall as the Countess initiates her ceremony to ascend to a higher form. The sun is gradually eclipsed, and the devourer of the sun begins to reveal herself. The darkest of twists, the eternal darkness worked its eerie charm, turning Bathory into her magnificent Sekhmet form, a towering 7-foot-tall Egyptian vampire goddess. You know, the kind of transformation that makes you wonder if she's on a secret audition for a monster modeling agency. Meanwhile, over at the Abbey, Drolta and Richter found themselves in a showdown, and it wasn't about who could recite the alphabet backward faster. Anette, on the other hand, decided to take a leisurely stroll downstairs into the dungeons, presumably for a dungeon-themed tea party. But wait, there's more. Down in the dungeons, Edouard was having a heart-to-heart with some of the night creatures, including the newly transformed Jacques. He's all like, "My singing is the bomb, and I'm not ready to leave this party just yet." Then, like a true party host, he pointed them in the direction of the machine that needed fixing. Anette, feeling all magical and stuffed, sprinted over to a room and began an incantation to open a doorway to hell. Apparently, she had a side gig as a hell-bound travel agent. She even used the same incantation muttered by Tara from upstairs, because why not? Speaking of Tara, she had a face-off with Abbott, who decided to drop some biblical references about sacrifices, comparing Maria's situation to that time when Abraham almost BBQ'd his own son. Terry was having none of it and basically told him that this wasn't your typical Old Testament God. Nope, this was pure cruelty on a world tour. Just when things seemed hopeless for our heroes, Bathory joined the fray, and boy, was she a force to be reckoned with. The hunters were like, hey, let's attack. But Bathory shut them down with her magic like a supernatural bouncer in a club. As the hunters realized they were about as outnumbered as a kid in a candy store with only one jelly bean left, Tara decided to make the ultimate sacrifice and traded herself for her daughter. Emmanuel, looking horrified, declared his love for Tara, to which she delivered the epic line, "God has given you the ram." Translation, "You're saved, dude." Meanwhile, Anette finally managed to break out of the dungeon and use her magical skills to turn a broken pillar into a DIY wrecking ball, smashing through the wall like a boss. As Bathory chomped down on Tara's neck, weakening her, the hunters grabbed Maria and hightailed it out of there. The masses outside weren't exactly throwing a welcome-back parade. Instead, they opted for sticks and stones. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more heartbreaking, Mirzak joined the escape party and asked about Tara. The hunters, with a heavy heart, responded she decided to stick around.